Hello, freaks. So, you guys voted on the type of review that I would do for this movie, and yeah, we're covering Inside Out 2 today. This one might be a little shorter than usual, not because I think the movie is bad or anything, just because I think it's a very straightforward movie, which means I don't have a whole lot to say. But at the same time, I think with what it did, despite it being so straightforward, it did what it did really, really well. Blech, sorry, that was really bad pronunciation on my part. Anyway, let's get into it. So first, I want to talk about the general story and just the events, so major spoilers. If you're looking for a review that does not include the spoilers of the plot beats, yeah, you might want to click off of this. I'll put a timestamp when I get some more general stuff later on. So basically, I do not think that a simple story does automatically equal a bad story. I feel like everyone nowadays is so bent on making a story so unique that it's nothing anyone has ever seen before, and they think that's the only way that their movie is going to be taken seriously. And I don't think that that is a rule of thumb. I don't think that that should be always what we strive to do, because sometimes stories do need to be retold in just slightly different ways, and sometimes a simplistic story is all you need to get a message across. If you have a very simple message, then it doesn't always need a super complex narrative in order to fulfill that message in terms of getting it to the audience. So, basically with Inside Out 2, since we have literally puberty as the plot line, the overarching plot of our main character, or main human, I should say, Riley, coming to a part in her life where big decisions are going to have to be made. Things are changing, not just with her life, but all her friends' lives. And also, it's the introduction of new feelings, new emotions, and new situations that weren't present before. And because of that, I feel like the story of just the hockey camp that literally is only just a weekend, I feel like that's actually a good way to do it. So many people are going to say that it's such low stakes since it's literally just a weekend hockey camp, and all that rides on it is just whether or not Riley's going to get on the team or not. But what people don't seem to understand, especially with kids and teens, is that they don't have the foresight of knowing that this moment is something that's not going to basically determine their happiness for the rest of their lives. They don't have the foresight and the experience and knowledge that this too will pass, no matter if it goes well or not. And so many people like to trivialize kids' issues because they think, oh, once they're in their 20s, they'll forget about this. They won't even care about this. But but the kid doesn't have that foresight. The kid is not able to comprehend that yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make the kid stupid, and that doesn't make the kid have an overreaction to this. That's just how their brains are wired at that point in their development. So I feel like this is a good way to show that and to understand the perspective of Riley thinking that so much weighs on this because of the pressure she feels to be successful. So, I'm already at 4 minutes. I said this was going to be short. Okay. So, the overarching plot of basically whether or not Riley is going to get onto this new hockey team for high school is very much something that a teenager would think is the end-all be-all of their world. And I'm glad that they didn't try to make this super complicated in terms of having Riley go through something that your average teenager does not have to go through. I feel like that would have undermined the first movie in the sense that it was so relatable. And I also feel like no matter what was going to happen in this movie, no one was ever going to think it would live up to the first Inside Out. But it just had to be good. It didn't have to live up to that movie. The second one just needed to be good. Because as long as it didn't undermine the first one, there's no real reason to be that upset about it not reaching the heights of hype that the first movie received, you know? So moving on to the characters, I really, really liked all the new emotions, even boredom. I know people are going to say that that emotion was the least likable or was probably so underwhelming. And the thing is that I feel like each of those new emotions, we've got boredom, embarrassment, anxiety, and envy. All of them played a decent part in the narrative in terms of showing how conflicting emotions can really send someone into a tizzy. So many people paint morals, especially for kids, as these black and white things that if you feel this way, then that makes you either a good or bad person. And that's not always true. Everyone has conflicting emotions, and just because you have conflicting emotions doesn't make you a bad person. I felt like this was a really good way to implement those characters rather than just say, we're going to throw in these new characters just to have new promotional art, and they're not going to play a big part in the story, actually. We've had that happen with a lot of kids' shows, a lot of movies that are aimed towards kids before. First thing that comes to mind is like the Smurf movies and basically any movie that basically has a long track record, but they're only throwing in a new character just for one simple gimmick. That didn't happen with this film, or at least I don't feel like it did. I think that these new emotions, the 4 new emotions, really bounced off of each other well, for one. And for 2, I really feel like these emotions they're painted as antagonists, not villains. The other emotions that we know and love already, joy, sadness, disgust, fear, and anger, yes, they see them as something that must be stopped, but not because they think they're inherently bad. But it's because they think that they're hurting Riley. And in some ways, they're right. And in also some ways, they're wrong. And that's how you do characters with an antagonist and not just a straight-up villain. All the new emotions think they're doing what is right for Riley. They think that they are preparing her for the worst so she does not get hurt. And that's actually what we teach a lot of kids. We teach kids to lower their expectations in terms of not having high expectations for themselves, but we lower their expectations in terms of saying, well, you can't always get what you want. Life is tough. You are going to have these struggles, which is good to an extent. But if you overdo it with that kind of talk to kids, they're just going to end up thinking that they have to settle for second best in terms of their goals, in terms of what they're capable of. And then you get a kid that doesn't believe in themselves and is unmotivated. And I feel like this whole movie is very much a cautionary tale of letting these emotions like envy, anxiety, those emotions can either drive you or they can break you. And because of that, like the emotions, they all have ways of actually helping in the right circumstances. But if you rely on them solely for every single situation that pops up in your life, then yeah, it's going to end up really hurting you. And I feel like the movie did a great job of saying that without painting the new four emotions as straight up villains. I know some people are going to think that because these days people don't understand the difference between a villain and an antagonist, because people think if you dislike a character, then that automatically makes them the villain. I hate that. There's nothing that grinds my gears more than people assuming that just because a character does something that they personally don't like, then that automatically makes them the villain of the story. That characters can be more complex than that. But moving on from pet peeves, finally I wanted to talk about the fact that the animation and the way that they used the mindscape to make new settings, it was very interesting. I didn't think that they were going to fail in terms of creating really beautiful and interesting environments for the emotions to have adventures through, but I was actually, to be honest, blown out of the water really of how they decided to implement these things into Riley's mind, as the four new emotions are kind of hijacking it at the same time as the other emotions are trying to get to the back of the mind. I felt like particularly my favorite settings were definitely the projection room. Like, anybody who is a worst case scenario type of person understands that to a very high level. I really also liked the brainstorm scene, as well as I think the back of the mind was actually really well done. I know it's simple in terms of just saying that it's just a mountain of memories you don't want to think about, but at the same time, a lot of people don't realize how many of those type of memories they suppress and try to forget about. And when it piles up so high, there's a lot of things back there that we keep in the back of the mind that if we actually did take the time to think about them, it could actually be helpful. But so many people say, just forget about it, just move on. And that's not helpful in terms of processing those memories. Of course, it's not good to dwell on them, but I like the imagery of just this mountain of orbs of thoughts and experiences and memories that are not fun to think about. And we don't want them to define us, but just because we think about them doesn't mean they do define us. It's very much something that I feel like the level of maturity it takes to acknowledge that we all have moments that we're not proud of. We all have moments where we feel like we massively screwed up and there's no taking it back. Those kind of moments that we like to say we just have to move on from, it takes a level of maturity to acknowledge that we have those feelings in the first place, we have those memories in the first place, and to actually use them as part of the plot to get Riley back on track. That's really important for kids to see. That's really important for kids to experience in terms of having an on-screen character acknowledge their faults, acknowledge their conflicting emotions, and acknowledge the fact that a lot of things define us. You can't just narrow it down to a few things. A lot of things define us depending on the context of the situation we're in, and also how we choose to handle things in any given moment. It's really, I feel like it was really well done. I feel like the plot, in terms of everything being a little bit rushed here and there, like basically moments where we were clearly jumping from location to location in the mindscape, and just every few minutes we would have to take a wind down moment to say, wow, this place has changed. Like, That happened a little too much for my taste, but I know they really wanted to hammer in the message that it changed more than even we expected. I just think they could have done it in a different way that would have made the narrative flow a little bit better. But I do really like the fact that even when we would go back to headquarters, the new emotions were entertaining enough that I feel like I didn't get bored when we went back to them. I wasn't wishing we would go back to Joy and her team trying to get to the back of the mind. I feel like each set of characters were well done. Can I just say Envy is my favorite of the new emotions? I don't know why, but she's adorable, but she also is very relatable in the sense that we've all been envious, we've all been jealous of somebody or something, and I mean, honestly, I feel like they could have really botched that character with the delivery. Like, they could have made it so bad, and she could have been even more annoying than a lot of people thought Anxiety was going to be, but they didn't do that. Wow, we're past 15 minutes. So much for a short vid. But I'm glad I got to talk about this. I want to hear from you guys now. Overall, I think, despite the pacing problems and despite the fact that it had low stakes, I feel like this movie was very, very solid. I'll probably make a second video actually about one other specific thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to leave that as a surprise for next time. So, basically, comment, like, and subscribe, and don't forget to talk about how you received this movie in terms of what did it do for you? Did it make you feel anything like the first movie did in terms of realizing stuff about your own life, realizing something about a family member, or making you realize something about how society treats kids? A lot of things can come from this. So I want to hear a discussion from you guys. So I will see you guys in the next one. If you like these kind of rambly reviews and you want to see more of them, please let me know, because lately I've been bouncing back and forth between scripted and non-scripted videos. So other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.